VoyMonk video voice vlog, and it is Friday. As we get ready to end this May and go into June, and weather that in a time that's honestly not my favorite. I know I'm weird. I like the dark. I like the dreary. I like the cold. I am much more at home in the cold than I am in the into the warmer weathers like summer, but be that as it may, I was talking about success this week and different aspects of what it means to me personally and all that kind of stuff. And I was mentioning yesterday about reality TV shows and versus soap operas in back in the day. And I would say that in large part, when I talk about looking at other places, I'm not talking about just television or, things that are in the media in those respects, reality TV versus scripted television from the past. So I also look at the news. I also look at information from there. I also look at podcasts and people that, talk and are in influencers and things like that, because that's definitely a part of that ecosystem. I think that social order, as it were. And when I say I see success from there, projected success is oftentimes something that, even without big production behind it, the content that's created is sometimes, even if it's on a smaller scale, bigger than obviously what I have and a lot of other people do. But, there are still ways of projecting, still ways of looking at things. And it's just like, whether it's someone who's selling a system or telling you how to become rich, in like them, it's just like outside of cars, outside of money, outside of material wealth and things that they're supposed to have. What about the actual things that, at least to me, kind of matter to me, like family, about relationships, about being healthy, about being able to, engage in passions and interests that aren't limited to just financial consequences or results. I think mostly what I see, and even if it's as real, like someone on the news wins the lottery or something like that, sometimes the behind the scenes and the documentaries, you find out that sometimes the people that started one way, you many times can wind up in the same boat, as I stated earlier this week about living outside one's means. Money can be the problem, but, money can't necessarily solve it. I think Jay-Z, I ripped off. I don't know. Money can be the problem, but money can't solve the problems, meaning that there are just some things that come down to a lot of other human factors, and it's easy to be judgmental and critical. That's not what I'm being at all. I'm just simply talking about success and what it means, at least from my perspective, and the ways that I've been exposed to it, maybe like yourself. And like I said, when I see a lot of the instances and circumstances that are around and abound, it's sometimes even the most opulent and the optics that are used to kind of suggest, hey, usually if it's like some kind of money system, you want to be rich, you want to be a millionaire, do this or do that. And it's like, I'm not honestly seeing success. I'm seeing money. I'm seeing what, could be manipulation, meaning someone who's got a rented car, being photographed and filmed in a rented house, someone who's got models who are paid to smile and look agreeable. I don't know, man. It's, to me, like I said, I think those are bells that are great and targets for someone who, I think when I'm in my 20s or whatever, those things would be a lot more appealing then than they are now. But I can look at myself then as opposed to now, and while I'm just as stupid in different ways, I was definitely very stupid in terms of what I felt was important, especially in the immediate, over the long term. And so, like I said, as far as at obtaining and creating wealth, like I said, it's like anything else. Success to me doesn't have any actual value unless it means something from the ground up to begin with. I talked about the beginning of the week getting lucky. As much as I kind of abhor that word and the concept, I mean, of just relying on chance, the fact is that, some things are chance. I'm not talking about luck. I'm talking about things that can come a person's way by one means or another, but not necessarily truly feeling as though, whatever success I would have is ultimately based on something that I know, as opposed to something that I have an idea about because I don't know and maybe afraid to look. I guess it's kind of a sense of don't look down, right? Because maybe you figure out just how high you are up and whether or not it was worth the climb, or it's worth the risk to be doing what you're doing, which maybe in my own mind feels successful. I think there's obviously the objective idea that, would you choose a reality that was miserable, or would you choose something that was fake but it was bliss? And I can honestly say that, I've I've looked up that circumstance and asked the questions many a times in the 47 years that I've been alive. And I can tell you that there are definitely layers to that perspective in answering that question as far as a definitive. Now, I know the answer for myself, but be that as it may be, that doesn't necessarily get me out of the question. And it doesn't get me out of the consequence either way of any decision that I might make in reference to. It's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. Meaning that what do you ultimately express as far as success? I mean, I know some people have their general overall philosophy. Some people are very disciplined. Some people have very much an academic approach or sense to those things. And like I said, the knowledge of any of those things or all combination of the above, I don't know that those things necessarily mean ultimate together happiness, and certainly by way of means success in what that success means. I think for me, success means health. It means mind. It means time. And of course it means money, but not just money, because money can't buy you time. It can't buy you mind, right? And it certainly can't always buy you health. And in fact, oftentimes you need a lot of money, especially if you don't have health. And it's easy to take advantage of or I should say advantage, or take for granted any of the four that I mentioned, which is why when it comes to being presence of mind, that is something that I've spoken about, my experience and what is important to me, because, I've rushed through a lot of things in my life and still do, mostly because it was out of anticipation for something greater or better that was coming along or getting to that point. And that's certainly a folly of my younger years. I still hold on to those bad habits and thinkings and that kind of thing, even at the expense or the consequence of my anxiety and depression and some other things. And, like I said, when it comes to success, I mean, there's no necessary need to think about any of this existentially, I believe is what I'm trying to say. But the truth is that sometimes avoiding the question altogether, going with the flow and not thinking about it is easier. But then again, at the same time, I do notice that, as a nation, that we have had abundance and things, traditionally that, compared to some other situations is great. But at the same time, it's like we have various different ways that we cope. Many of those things are very unhealthy. things that we know aren't good for us, things that, despite in our face, maybe having our health, having time, having money, and, like I said, having mind, we will sometimes risk and take on consequences, whatever the odds or chances, because as I've mentioned before, sometimes the stupidity that we choose is really less about how intelligent we are and what we know and more about what we want. Given that middle finger to life that says, this is what you've given me, this is what I want. Even if I don't know exactly what I want, the pursuit of that happiness, that success, whatever it is in our mind, I think really truly is a driving force. And I think kind of part of the folly of thinking about these things, really going into it in depth, is one, the constitution or the stamina that it requires mentally and sometimes physically to endure what the possibilities are, to have the courage to, seek knowledge in as many different places as possible, books, TV, other sources, teachers, coaches, gurus, whatever they are. I'm not any of those things. Like I said, I'm just speaking about my experience. There's not really much relief, at least for me, in any of those places. I just think sometimes the struggle is the struggle, and that sometimes wisdom and knowledge is earned and learned at a time that it's appropriate, when it's appropriate for maybe that reason in some ways. And I'm not talking about some existential purpose or meaning or manifested destiny at all. That's not something that I'm talking about. I'm talking about just living life and experiencing it and trying to find ultimate success by not everyone else's definition around me, but me. What is it that makes me happy? And unfortunately, I think, like, for example, love or romantic, sometimes that kind of thing can be dependent on someone else. I'll give specific example. I think when it comes to love and success, I think I imagined at a younger age that, if I found the right girl, I found the right woman, that I would be inspired. If I had that love by my side, I could conquer all things and do all things. And that is definitely a marketing thing. That is something that is sold, especially growing up with the kind of rom-coms and the natural, ways that are used to try to influence and motivate individuals, usually to spend money. It's like if you want a good looking lady, you got to have a car, you got to have money, you have to be able to support and do all those things. And I'm not conflicting with that. I'm not suggesting those things don't have kernels of truth to a greater degree, but what about what actually means something? What about the truth, right? And as I've gotten older, like I said, I am absolutely not immune to watching the Baywatch or the idea of what can be, and it doesn't have to be be isolated to just gender. I'm sure ladies, maybe you're sold wealthy, good-looking guy, and it's like we're all sold on this idea of success in many ways. I'm talking about love at the moment, or maybe what is not even really love, just an idea rather than the reality. Because the truth is that for my thinking that if I just found the right woman and I fell in love and she would be supportive of me and, that would give me the inspiration to do so much. I think there's truth to that. But I don't think at this age, with what I've learned, is that that's a one-way street. And just like any other relationship, friendships as well, which I don't have many or a lot of those, and I don't know that I'm alone in that thing. But you make an investment, right? Friends aren't, the people that you see on TV in a sitcom, right? Real friends are people that have problems, real problems, just like I do. And, the way to solve that, to take that life's journey, is a difficult one. And it's not always as easy as it seems, in a marketing campaign or something like that. Just do it. Maybe just, have a beer and go out and shoot pools with friends. And maybe, the reality is the worst thing that you'll ever have to argue about is whether or not someone ate your yogurt on MTV. I mean, this is how I grew up, and this is what I saw. This is the media and the content that I consumed. And at 47 years old, some of it's new, some of it's reinvented, some of it has changed, but it's still in a lot of ways the same. I can say that without dumping. I can say that without making any complaints, but just observations. The passions is that, yes, of course I'd like to find love. I don't think I'm alone, whether you're younger, you're older. I mean, sometimes I think people find love in all the wrong places because, what is there to do? I think some of the most successful relationships people have are with their pets, and I'm not saying that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but, there's something to be said about, a kind of a one-way street, not having to anticipate much beyond just maybe a handful of things. But, when it comes to actual relationships, whether they be romantic or not, it's complicated. Like life, it's tough. And I'm not saying that there's not a way to find success or love, but I think a person can get fatigued, they can get tired, they stop looking, and of course it's easy to blame a lot of this or that, and I'm certainly not doing any of that. I know people bang on about the media and all that kind of stuff. That's not what I'm doing here. I mean, socially, consciously, unconsciously, we have blind spots, we have holes. Humanity is just not this perfect monolith. I think there are layers to it as well. So how to figure it out, I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm not a guru. I'm just self-reflecting here. But I can tell you where I've been. And honestly, when I look to other people that, will talk about these things, I oftentimes find that they fall into a certain rut. I mean, sometimes things, I don't know if you're listening to this and you know what I'm talking about, you'll engage in conversation, you'll listen to different rhetoric about the different ideas about what success is and the human condition. And it's sometimes interesting, sometimes, more than others, but there's always a wall that's hit, right? I mean, it's like, it's one thing to kind of observe the things that I've mentioned. It's another thing to entirely to say what to do about any of it or all of it, or a single, solution or a pill or something to get through it or understand it. Truth versus fiction. Again, sometimes it doesn't really feel as though it's as easy as that. I think people just like to be happy. And I think, wanting to do that or never having that isn't necessarily the same as suggesting that you can never be happy, or that, there aren't certain costs or expectations that are required. But it seems complicated. I mean, you could do all the right things. You can obey all the rules. You can, get what you think you're supposed to get, no matter how hard you work. And then sometimes you can do absolutely nothing for the wrong reasons. I don't think there's a lot of easy solutions at all. And, as much as we, think about them like, dimensions that are beyond our comprehension, it's a doozy. And like I said, I mean, I don't think I started this specific video voice vlog with the meaning and purpose behind what I've mentioned, and it excites me to a degree because I'm expressing and articulating how I feel, but ultimately I'm still here. I'm talking to you. Hopefully people are listening, but probably more likely than not. And if they aren't, it doesn't really surprise me either, because some of the things I've talked about, it's like, it doesn't surprise me that sometimes people do the outrageous and crazy things we hear about in the news and stuff like that, because it's, I don't know, if you're not numbing yourself, I think if you're not avoiding it, you might actually kind of understand in some of the crazy ways why some of the things that we deem and say are crazy are the way that they are. And I think fundamentally, and especially now, one of the big things is that there's got to be a solution. There's got to be a silver bullet for all of this. And, like I said, I'm not necessarily of that thinking. I'm not pontificating. I'm not, like I said, I don't know the answers. I don't know. And, as much throughout my life, things I have learned, things that I know, things that I don't know, I think the one thing that I do know, the thing that is most valuable, is to come to the conclusion, I don't know. That's okay. And I think there's a beauty in having the wisdom to understand and appreciate I don't know. I think you also have to have the courage to try to figure it out. And I think you can spend a lifetime doing that, have various different kinds of successes. But I don't know that necessarily makes anyone an expert. And I don't necessarily think that just because the recipe works on television, that's supposed to be the end result. That in large part is exactly what you'll get. And so, like I said, when it comes to success, that's honestly what I'm feeling and thinking and doing, and or not. I think I made a big Friday vlog, and and usually the Friday vlogs are supposed to be a decompression, but this is just something that I don't know, man. Maybe it's come from my conscious and subconscious. Maybe I'm reeling and reading all this out because that's where I'm at, and that's what I'm feeling. And so, hopefully, if this actually is even helpful, I think at least if I'm not alone and other people don't feel alone, because maybe they engage with this, and if you want to respond or comment or whatever, great. Don't have all the answers, not looking for it, and not philosophizing or anything, but just what's your experience? Just, where are you at? Anyways, yeah, I don't know, man. I'm feeling pretty cathartic about all this. I probably shouldn't. It'll change, like I said. I don't know, but yeah, that's what success means. And I probably want to end with this: is that love to me, I think, is the most important thing. Having the people that are closest to me, and even people that, God, as life changes and we get older and we lose so much of the more precious things that we take for granted, I would say, like I said, health, my mind, my time, much more important than how much money I'd ever have in the bank account. Although that would definitely help solve a lot of problems as well. But anyways, I think that's going to do it for this Friday vlog. Hopefully you've listened. Hopefully, this not me completely shouting into the wind. And so, like I said, thanks. If you have, if not, like I said, this is a journey for me, myself, and being my authentic self. But if this is a prayer or wish that gets to the ears of people who might want to engage, that's great. So until next time, thanks. Take care.